you going to do that?
Sure. I'm not really prepared, but give me one moment.
I don't have it either, so.
There is a copy of the oath in the agenda.
Oh, it's on there? Okay.
Yeah, I got it on the screen.
Oh, good. Can you screen share?
Good
No,
luck.
it's on, I do another computer so I can look at the emails while I'm Zooming.
Okay, just give me one moment.
Sorry. I think I'm up to 3 screens. Yeah, I'm up to 3 screens now,
That's better.
my workstation. Bob, it took me 8 years to get my office out of the garage.
No, I'm in the garage because my wife's in there doing stuff and I have my heaters on in here and I got an insulated garage and it's pretty soundproof and
Hey, Roberta, did you find it? I have it.
I'm pulling it up right now. Okay. So, I believe actually, he needs to read it. I can't share my screen either.
I can do it. It's okay.
aren't we?
Because the executive, he has to solemnly affirm that he will support.
Yes,
And
you just repeat it. You read it and they repeat it. It's typically it.
okay. So both at the same time, both William
Sure.
and. Okay. So the execution of this oath is required by Article 20, Section 3 of the Constitution of the State of California. Repeat after me. I
Bob Daddy,
I, William Warwick,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
you solemnly
I will-
affirm. Go ahead.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
That I will support and defend the
Defend the
Constitution of the United
Constitution.
States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all
foreign and
enemies,
domestic,
foreign and
Against-
domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the
And I will-
Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this
that I
obligation
take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any
Without
mental
mental
reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
that I will well and faithfully
that I will and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about
which
to
I'm
enter.
about to enter.
Subscribed and sworn to before me this 28th day of January 2021.
Subscribe and
Barbie.
support me before this 29th day,
28th.
28th day of January 2000.
Subscribe and sworn to be the 28th day of January 2021.
All right, well, congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. You are now board members of the Ojai Basin Groundwater Agency.
Wow. Well, Richard, when we planned this 10 years ago, finally got here. What can I say?
Okay, so I guess you can call the meeting officially to order now.
All right.
All right, Director Bob Daddy,
Yes, ma'am.
Director William Wyrick,
Here,
Director Thielke,
Here.
and Chair Hages.
Here.
And Director Finch, is he still absent?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is director announcements. So we'll start with Peter, the mutuals.
We're just waiting for rain out here in the East End. And the one thing where our energies are moving, we have 4 wells up in our canyon, and we are seriously looking at removing the hydrogen sulfide from those wells, which exist in different concentrations, so as to get a little more of our potable supply in the hot months, July through November. So that's what we're up to out here.
All right. Bill, City of Ojai?
I don't have anything.
I guess I'm Casitas Water District. Right now, I've only been on the board for about 6 weeks, but the new board has been working hard at trying to finalize the safe yield. That's the main task before us right now. And hopefully we'll have something within the next couple of weeks. Okay, Bob, Community Services District.
Well, this is my first meeting, brand new, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we're doing. We will discuss the agenda, though, as written, correct? The 47 pager? Or is this time for me to bring any of the questions up?
No, those
or
things-
anything away?
No, those will come up item by
Okay.
item.
Okay, well, we're just praying for rain like everybody else, and it looks like Casita got the 4 bay cleaned out. We got some great shots of that thing, so we should be able to grab a bunch of water this year. So hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay, John, General Manager comments?
I don't have any this afternoon. Just the start of the new year and trying to get my head around things, and I'd rather defer my time to Trey, who's going to give us an update on the groundwater sustainability plan. And we have a few other action items that we need to discuss. So anything other than that, I have nothing else to share today.
Okay. Jordan, you want to do the basin status reports?
Yeah, gladly. Let me try to share my screen here. I should be able to. Take this from the beginning. There are 2 separate sections of this presentation. We're going to talk first about basin conditions, input, output, change in storage, and all that fun stuff. And then later on, under a separate agenda item, the basin conditions will give way to the summer planning. So without further ado, and to get through what we're going to talk about when we mean basin conditions, that's precipitation to date on the 2020 to 2021 water year. Of course, by the end of this sentence, that's changed, and that hopefully a few more drops of rain have fallen. It's been ever so slow and steady, but we're getting there. We also want to talk about basin storage in the key well area, depths to water, and amount of storage in the basin as a percentage in acre feet. And then outflow at the San Antonio Creek spill point of the basin. As we're all well aware, and fingers are on the pulse, this is a screenshot from a little earlier today, but really in keeping with relatively dry conditions since October 1st, beginning of the water year, 2020, about 3 1/4 inches on the ridgetop, and about half that on the valley floor, about 1.5 inches, 1.79 at Soul Park and the fire station. Of course, this is changing pretty rapidly, and it's nice to see the snow a little bit up on the ridge tops over the past week. Of course, that means snow melt and eventually finding its way down into the bedrock aquifers and the creek flows, which recharge the basin, melt slowly enough. Now, we're all waiting for the big deluge, as Bob alluded to. But we know that it takes about 12 inches of rain on the valley floor, typically, before we see surface water crossing the basin. So this morning's photo here that you see is of San Antonio Creek from Grand Avenue Bridge, looking up toward the mountains to the north. It's pretty gray and ominous looking, but yet no flow in the creek. And that's to be expected until we get that 12 inches of precipitation, being that much of the soil moisture and native flora up there, they'll take up that first 12 inches before they let it go and it flows across the basin, at least at this point. So once it gets into the basin, where does it go? Of course, into the aquifers, and we've got a network of monitoring wells that monitor the basin water levels of production aquifers. But for the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds rehabilitation depth discrete monitoring well, which is the northerlymost of the basin wells there, shown in these blue octagons. And then, of course, the discharge side near the spill point where the Santa Ana Arroyo Prieto Fault crosses the San Antonio Creek and water exits as surface flow from the basin. But we like the key well. So this is a download from today. And what you're looking at here are two charts, really. One is the blue line is the water level above a logger. And that footage axis on the right, y-axis, goes from 32 at the bottom to 193 at the top. But you can see that over 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21 now, actually this well's been out of service, and we had to remove the logger for 3 distinct periods. It's pretty obvious where those were, but it's also pretty obvious where in 2021 now we're starting to tick back up, and having likely already hit the nadir of the water year in storage, apparently right around New Year's Eve. So we'll get into what that means. Stretching that out on a different scale, over the past century, 80 years really here, you can see where we've been and where we're going. The nadir was likely at December 30th, 2020. Depth to water was 146.37 feet, pretty similar to the previous year. And then we started picking back up again. Today's water level of 145.60 feet, still right around that 72% or 57,600 acre feet within the basin. Still down off the May 25th, 2020 peak, where we had 78% capacity at 62,400 acre feet. Now, while San Antonio Creek was dry on above Grand Avenue Bridge upstream, at least until it's wet again in the headwaters, water is still daylighting in San Antonio Creek south thereof. So just around Sol Park, you see a daylighting of groundwater, likely coming from the perch system rather than the production aquifers within the basin. And so every month at least, we're mapping this. You see the little GPS coordinate unit there that's taking the water levels, or the point at which the water is daylighting in the creek. So we have a latitude, longitude, and elevation of that, which we use as we'll discuss here momentarily. But we're also measuring, and this is a photo today at 11:20 a.m. May change if we get a massive deluge, but we'll see how much that actually changes. What we do is we measure this point with you see the line going across the creek, and our flow meter they're leaning up to the right, and that's how we measure the velocity of the water as well as the depth. So today we measured 0.67 acre feet at that point. It's over the Santa Ana Arroyo Prieto Fault, where the surface water leaves the basin. There's also about 7/100ths of a CFS of flow coming out of Montgomery Creek. That usually gets a little bit wetter first as it drains more of the clayey portion of the basin on the west side and much of the urbanized area of the city. This is, of course,
Jordan, you meant 0.67 CFS, not acre feet, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll get to the acre feet. Yeah, 0.67 CFS in San Antonio Creek. So a total of 0.74 CFS collectively between Montgomery Creek and San Antonio Creek, although they're both technically in San Antonio Creek. This is, of course, surface outflow. It's a snapshot basis. So this measurement is easier to take on a monthly basis rather than going there every day. But we'll get to how we're measuring that on a more continuous high resolution basis shortly. If we extrapolate these values out in this water year, we've had about 30 to 45 acre feet per month leave the basin as surface water. That's quite a bit. And it's not surprising, and it's not what we don't expect. The 148 acre feet to date in this water year is one of the ways that we're keeping track of this, and critically important as we will discuss in the GSP portion of the meeting. What does this mean with respect to rainfall? We're just starting to get into 2021. How does this relate to the water elevation and the production portions of the basin? You've seen this graph before. A lot of information here. X-axes were since 2017, so it's a very similar graph to what you saw in the Elrod Keywell area, high resolution hydrograph. So you got that in elevation there on the left y-axis, and that's shown in the longer hydrograph, the darkest blue or purple on this chart. And surface flow, where it's continuous, you see the full vertical bars in San Antonio Creek, where it has flown continuously. Not yet this year, but in two distinct spikes in 2020. Then you have also the point of daylighting groundwater. Once the continuous flow stops, you see the lighter blue squares. Those are points where we've taken those GPS measurements and seen how that correlates. You can see it's not exact with the production aquifers. And then the flow rate in CFS discharge, both the red X's, those are our monthly measurements that we take at the basin boundary of outflow in CFS, and right now it's been well less than 1 for much of the time period since the spring of 2020, and then down further before San Antonio Creek discharges into the Ventura River Basin, or Upper Ventura River groundwater basin at least. You see those are the pinkish bars there. So still more flow collectively would find its way there, but there is more consistent flow out of the perched aquifer system from the Ojai Basin. So I mentioned what we're doing that's a little special down there in San Antonio Creek. What we have is a logger that has been recording water levels every 3 minutes. So we're able to see how much change there is. The scale here, this is basically only since Thanksgiving. And I just pulled this logger out this week in anticipation of the rain. I don't want to lose $1,000 logger, and more importantly, all the data therein, to catch some flow that may or may not come, and if it does, come with vengeance and take our equipment with it. So what we like here is this is a 3-minute interval, both for temperature and for water level, and it's relatively consistent. The scale here on the right y-axis is only from about 33 to 34 feet. So you're only looking at a couple inches of change, and really consistent and correlative with temperature changes over literally those every 3 minutes. But the key is that it tends to be a little bit more flow when it's cooler, typically in the early morning hours, those peaks around 7 or 8 a.m. And then by the end of the day, it's plants, especially that are deciduous, and of course evergreen ones that are always transpiring from the creek and the perched aquifer system are taking up quite a bit of that water from what would otherwise discharge to the creek. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen until we get down into the Wildlife Conservation Board portion. But I think if there's any questions, happy to ask. I'll stop sharing there.
Any questions? Bill?
Jordan, do you have any speculation you'd want to share as to why we're seeing a little more consistent discharge that's not necessarily correlated to precipitation rates?
Well, I think it has to discharge from the perched aquifer system to San Antonio Creek.
Right.
I don't want to speculate, but I will hypothesize, and the data that we have support that hypothesis to date, because the perched aquifer system receives a lot of irrigation return flow. It receives some septic return flow, and it's relatively consistent hydrographically and hydrologically over the course of, for as long as anybody's monitored it. Water levels within the city in that very first aquifer tend to be relatively shallow and relatively consistent too. So likewise, when the water is leaving that system to the low point in the creek, it's relatively consistent as well.
Is it too far much of a reach to speculate that possibly a better job of handling our hardscapes so we get better recharge within the city limits may help with that consistency over time?
I think that's not a stretch at all. I think that there's a certain degree of flattening the curve, to coin a phrase hydrographically speaking, at least, if we are able to slow and spread and sink some of that water by modifying the hardscapes, we're able to induce that, at least in short term, into that perched aquifer system, such that it continues that hydrograph over a longer receding limb rather than an abrupt receding limb of that hydrograph.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Do we test the quality of that water to find out if it's got pesticides and fertilizers in it, the perched water that's coming up? We do anything to try to see where that is at all?
The short answer to the question is that the OBGMA does not, although the stream teams and Channel Keeper and some private entities, and we've been involved in some of those studies, we have tested some of that water quality for nitrates and nutrients. Most recently in November of this past year, we did a study where we did a snapshot concurrent testing of San Antonio Creek from where water daylights in the Ojai Basin to where it would confluence with the Upper Ventura River Basin. And interestingly, the nitrates were really high coming out of Ojai Basin in that perch system. As you'd expect, it's loaded with all kinds of nutrients, fertilizers, and maybe some septic return flow. But the plants take that up so rapidly that by the time you get to Camp Comfort, the nitrates are indetectable. And we were kind of surprised by that. Like, wow, they take it up so fast. Of course, the flow was very low by design at the time we did that study. And we hope to be able to share a lot of that information in a more robust fashion in the coming months.
And so that's why that Arundo forest is 40 feet high. We're feeding it well.
That's part of it. They're enjoying that fertilizer for sure.
Yeah, but boy, that's a bomb waiting to burn off. Boy.
Let's try to reduce that enjoyment.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Jordan. The next item is public comments on items that are not on the agenda. So if there's anyone in the audience that has a comment, now's the time to do it. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the consent items.
I'm going to have to apologize. Roberta got me the minutes for December. I have not had an opportunity to review them, so I'll bring them back to you next meeting.
All right.
Well, you need Jim to pass them anyway, so.
Okay, item number 8, action items, a treasurer report.
I'll just give you a few brief comments. These are both for October and November of last year. No significant expenses in either month. Pretty much our operating expenses. October had a little bit of payments to Cure, Monday, and Saltus bookkeeping. Our revenues in both months were exceeding the expenses significantly, but that is a reflection of the charges that the board approved and are now being assessed for the groundwater sustainability plan. So we are seeing that revenue, and consequently the future statements that you'll see over the next few months will include payments to DUDEC for their services so far. Don't have anything else on these. Oh, just real quick, extractions for fiscal year 2019-2020 were approximately 4,200 acre feet from the basin. When I started working with OBGMA and there was a request for cutbacks, I think the lowest I had seen out of the basin was about 3,500 acre feet. And I think the highest, at least since I've been working in the basin, it was over 5,000 acre feet. So we've creeped back up a little bit, but we're still not back to where we were at 5,000 or 6,000 acre feet.
Chair Hayes, I had a question on the extraction chart.
I'm sorry?
I had a question on the extraction
please.
chart. Is this the appropriate time for that?
Sure.
Okay. You'll notice I got my calculator out and the everything cross-referenced on the 2019-2020 water year, totaling 4,088.19 acre feet, but the left did not. The 2018-19 adds up in my calculator to 4,523.83 acre feet, not 2,489.97. Just wondering, am I missing something here?
No, I think there was an error in that before. It hasn't been corrected, so I'll need to look at that and find out why that's like that.
And that would also mean that the charges and the number would be wrong too.
Possibly, yes. Yeah.
Because I divided $62,409 by 2,489. I got about $25 an acre feet. So I'm thinking that the charges are probably misstated as well for that previous year.
That's probably true.
Okay.
May I ask a question of John?
Sure.
When I look at the 18-19 year and the 19-20 year, and regardless, I did not get the calculator and I did not do the math. So I'm going to go off I'm going to go off what's here. And it shows that we had 2,490 acre feet, and then it went up to 4,200 acre feet
Not
year over year. And so what accounted for that? That's a pretty large increase in a single year.
Bob, when you actually add it up, it's 4,523.
Yeah, the math
Either
is
way,
correct.
significant change year over year. What we add more ag, we add more trees,
No, I think it's just a
It would
calculation
actually go
error.
down. It went down if that, you do the adding, right?
Yeah, I'll need to bring this report back to you, but I think they're both going to be fairly close in the consumption out of the basin. The 2,400 acre feet isn't correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that. And
I'll just wait till we get to numbers and we'll look at it again.
yeah, I'll bring that back so you can take a look at it after it's been corrected.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve it with the note that will be corrected?
Make a motion to
moved.
approve.
Second. Subject to amendment.
Roberta, and call the roll?
Director Bob Daddy,
Yes.
Director William Weirick,
Yes.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
and Chair Hedges.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I do need to ask, because I wasn't able to look at the video at the moment. The motion was by who?
I made the motion, Bob.
Okay, Bob Danny, and the second?
Wyrick.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item is our groundwater sustainability plan update. John, you wanna?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn this over to Trey Driscoll. Trey, I think you're still there, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. And for those of you that haven't met Trey, Trey's with Dudek Engineering, and they're doing the work on our groundwater sustainability plan.
I went ahead and shared the screen. Can everyone see the slides?
Yeah.
Yes.
Terrific. So we're going to give you an update on the groundwater sustainability plan today. In particular, we're going to discuss the public outreach and engagement plan, and then also provide some preliminary results for the land subsidence sustainability indicator. So here's the agenda for today in terms of
Go ahead, what?
I heard someone talking, I thought it was Zachary calling.
okay.
Oh, no.
I think that's just background noise. Madeline is going to give you an update on where we stand with the outreach and engagement plan. Madeline?
Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline Murray, and I'm working with Trey on the Dudek team, supporting the development of the groundwater sustainability plan, and specifically helping with the stakeholder communication and outreach. So I believe the outreach and engagement plan, the most current version, it was shared or is a part of the board packet. Is that correct, Trey? think
We've
you said-
got, yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so just for everyone to review, but basically just a high level overview is, the outreach and engagement plan is a tool to facilitate engagement in the process according with SIGMA, and the outreach plan goes over these are the 5 different sections of the outreach plan, discussing how, the SIGMA background, the background of the basin, background of the management agency, and the outreach goals and objectives, along with the strategy to achieve those goals and objectives, which is what we are diving in a little bit more into today. Next slide, please. And so the only changes from before, really the main changes, include the new email for which all comments and communication per the GSP outreach should be directed. So the new email is ohighbasingsp@gmail.com, and which is there, and which can be shared with the board, and so that anyone may actually have access to the email. And I've worked with Roberta on this and shared the access to this email with her as well. And so basically, these are the facility, I'm sorry, the main items in which we want to, for the strategy to engage the public and the board members and everyone involved in this process. So moving forward, next slide, please. So moving forward, basically the GSP plan developed through this process will regulate all future groundwater use. And it's important to note that SIGMA acknowledges that groundwater is best managed locally. So we want to make sure that, there's local control, and that that's how we move forward. And the GSA is required, and it's best for the development of the GSP to have local control, and for feedback on the GSP development and moving forward. We do want to have the outreach and engagement plan finalized. So there's a few comments that are left located in the appendices that we do need the OBGMA to respond to. And other than that, any questions or comments on the plan as it stands, we would appreciate having those comments in the next 2 weeks, which would be February 12th. And those comments can be emailed to the ohighbasingsp@gmail.com. And if there are any questions as of right now as to the changes or how the plan will be used or anything in that matter, I'd be happy to field those.
@gmail.com. And
Oh, that's okay. Sorry, I thought someone was talking. That was just a feedback. So yeah, that's my piece. If there are any questions, please let me know. And I'll hand it over to Trey at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the board members have any questions with the stakeholder engagement plan, but if you haven't had an opportunity to review it, please do so, and attempt to submit us comments within the next couple of weeks so we can get that plan finalized.
Chair Hages?
Yes.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. So as I understand it, what we prefer to do is, and I made several notes and comments. What we prefer to do, it sounds like, is to email those comments, maybe copying, would those be able to be copied to other board members in terms of sending those comments to you on the draft?
Yes, that we will compile all of the comments and have those available for others' review. But I mean, other board members can be copied on that as well.
So then you would respond to those comments, and we would still be seeing this in draft form again in front of the board down the road.
Depending on the number of comments received, it likely could be in draft form again prior to the board voting to finalize the plan.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, I'm fine with that. I've got a series of comments, but if I can copy other board members and more or less expect that it'll be in draft form again before it's set up for final approval, that's probably a better use of everyone's time.
Sure.
Is that okay, Richard?
Yes, I think the documenting all the comments and writing as much as possible is probably going to be helpful through this whole process.
I would just caution the board, if those comments are sent out from each of you, please don't respond and comment on the comments.
No
Because it'll be
no
considered-
reply alls, no reply
be-
alls.
Yeah, we don't need serial meetings on the side.
No. I just wanted to make sure the protocol was in place rather than going through my list right now, inefficient use of-
And if worst case, if it doesn't work with DUDEC like that, I can certainly be a go-between to make sure that I can collect all those comments and make sure the board sees them.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right.
So unless there are any other comments, I'll proceed with a quick update on the GSP progress. So we have completed drafts of the first 2 chapters, and we have moved on starting in January with chapter 3. And as you may be aware, this tends to be a lot of information and require an iterative process. So we are going to start providing some initial data and results primarily for the 6 sustainability indicators. And today I just wanted to provide the initial results or a preview of the data that we've reviewed for land subsidence. So just to give everyone a background, extensive groundwater withdrawals from aquifer systems have caused land subsidence in many California basins. If you see on the figure here to the right, this is a USGS figure where they have identified subsidence induced by groundwater pumping in the pinker color. There has been some identified locally, mostly in the Oxnard Plain. Under sigma, undesirable results occur when the effects caused by groundwater conditions occurring throughout the basin cause significant and unreasonable impacts to any of the 6 sustainability indicators. So in general, land subsidence is significant and unreasonable if it is sufficient in magnitude to interfere with land uses or damage infrastructure. It is ultimately up to the board and basin stakeholders to develop a definition of what constitutes a significant and undesirable result. Today, we're going to review available land subsidence data to assist with development of what constitutes significant and unreasonable impact for land subsidence. So I just wanted to provide kind of 2 basic definitions for subsidence and compaction. So compaction is a decrease in the volume or thinning of a geologic formation in the subsurface. So that's where you see the intergranular pore space here. The pore fluid pressure decreases and you get, in this case with the sand, a tighter packing. And then with the clay, you'll get the same packing, but you do tend to get a reorientation of the layers, which causes In the next slide, you'll see inelastic subsidence. So subsidence expresses itself at the land surface from the compaction of these geologic layers. And this is the classical 30 feet of subsidence in the San Joaquin Basin from 1925 to 1977. So just keep in mind that rate of subsidence compared to some of the rates of subsidence that we have potentially observed in Ojai in the coming slides. So there are two kinds of land subsidence. One is elastic, or a temporary fluctuation of land surface in response to seasonal groundwater recharge or extraction. And the other is inelastic, or permanent compression of the land surface caused by compaction of pore space. And as I showed in the previous slide, that often occurs in clay layers. And then inelastic deformation occurs when groundwater elevations drop below historical range and fine grained sediments become depressurized and compact. So this kind of just provides an overview or mathematical relationship of how subsidence occurs. But generally what happens is that because of groundwater pumping, the pore fluid pressure in the confined zones or the clay layers decreases. The total stress essentially remains the same. So your overburden, your clay, your aquifer material, that weight pretty much remains the same. And then the effective stress, let me get this right. So the effective stress that will increase under that scenario. So here we have a cross section, B to the south and B prime to the north of the Ojai Basin. And in this basin, you get the aquifer or pumping zones, which are separated in many areas of the basin by aquatards. And these are the lacustrine or lake deposits that have been laid down in the basin. They're continuous in many places throughout the basin, but they do not occur throughout the entire basin. But these aquatards or these clay layers are the ones that are most prone to compaction when the pore fluid pressure is low. So the best available data we have for Ojai to use to look at subsidence is remote or satellite measurements that are available for the period from 2015 to 2019. So based on that data, and I'll show you a figure that illustrates this in the next slide, but 41% of the basin experienced subsidence between 0 and 0.21 inches. 59% of the basin experienced uplift between 0 and 3/4 of an inch. And the average vertical displacement across the entire basin was an uplift of 0.16 inches. So the data from this time period indicate insignificant subsidence in the Ojai Basin. Observed subsidence likely from causes other than inelastic deformation.
What is the cause of the uplift? Is it sediment deposits or?
That's a really good question. We do have in the slide after this color ramp of the subsidence between 2015 and 2019. We do look at Key Well 4 North, 22 West, the groundwater levels at that well and vertical displacement. So we have some preliminary findings, but we definitely don't at this point have anything definitive of what's going on. So this
is
data
Jim.
set is collected from the European Space Agency from the Sentinel-1A satellite. As I mentioned, from January 2015 to 2019. So there's a sampling of 100 meter by 100 meter calculation grids. And then out of the 2,300 cells in the basin, as I mentioned, the average displacement is an uplift of 0.16 inches. So the central portion of the basin experienced uplift as noted by the yellow to green color ramp. The edges of the basin experience subsidence as noted by the dark orange to red color ramp. It is unknown why subsidence is occurring at the eastern and western edges of the basin. It is possible the subsidence is unrelated to groundwater withdrawal and due to tectonics or even soil erosion as the result of the Thomas fire that occurred in December 2017. We'd have to look into that a little bit more, the data and those areas to see if there was soil erosion. We just haven't had an opportunity to do that at this time.
This is Jim Finch, but given those up and downs, you can't, I mean, I would say you can't conclude that the subsidence is water. It could be just the tectonics and the geology that's active still in Ojai.
Right. So
Right. Okay.
to better answer that question, if we look at the nearest continuous GPS station, which is this triangle HVYS station located about a half-mile south of the basin, the land surface elevation at this station has remained relatively unchanged over the past 20 years, with a total decrease in elevation of about 0.79 inches since 2000. A previous study used GPS and INSAR data to document land motion throughout the western transverse ranges. This data indicates that subsidence extends into the mountains north and south of the basin consistent with tectonic motion rather than land motion that would be consistent with groundwater extraction caused subsidence. So there certainly appears to be a tectonic subsidence throughout the basin. So to get a better idea whether or not subsidence is, if there's a nexus with groundwater withdrawals, and in the next slide, a comparison of seasonal vertical displacement with groundwater levels is provided at Key Well 4 North 22 West, which is in the center part of the basin. And you can actually see there was actually a total uplift at this well from 2015 to 2019. So here's that comparison. The blue is the groundwater level hydrograph. The red is the vertical displacement. So because other time periods, we don't have this high frequency of collection for the INSAR data, but we do for this more recent period. So we can do this analysis. Based on the data at this location, it's not clear that the water level changes is the change or cause or uplift or subsidence. Correlations can be noticed at times, including a spike in water level and vertical displacement in September of 2016, this one right here. A similar increase can be seen in uplift in September 2018 and September of 2019.
Yeah, but if you calculate a correlation coefficient on that time series, you're not going to get any kind of significance whatsoever.
There was a moderate positive correlation.
What do you mean? How do you define moderate statistically?
I'd have to look into what the exact statistical results were. I don't know if Devin, do you have those in front of you at all? He's on the call, I believe.
I mean, usually would do some sort of statistical inference significance test on that. And I just wonder, you know, moderate defined is based on defining a certain statistical inference test. I'm not eyeballing that data. I used to do econometrics all the time. That doesn't look like a real time series positive correlation coefficient.
Yeah, this is
I think
Devin
some
here.
of those data are pumping water levels. So it might be more appropriate to use our logger data that we presented earlier in this presentation. I think you have that, Trey, but and Devin, let's make sure we use that data set because it's much higher frequency and you can pick out which are the pumping water levels.
Sure. Yeah. To answer both those questions, I don't have the correlation coefficient in front of me, but we can provide that at a later date. And as in terms of the water level data, this is data from the county of Ventura.
I just think you need to be careful with conclusions like overall moderate positive correlation when it may not be a significant correlation coefficient statistically. Just be careful is all I'm suggesting.
And this is Jim Finch again, and I'm sorry, I'm just on the telephone. But I don't see, given what you've seen both up and down, I mean, I hate to see us spend a lot of effort in this when we know that our basin, given the amount of gravel, the thin layers of clay, the geophysical information that you presented up and down. So subsidence is not an issue in our basin, and I'm a layman, I acknowledge, but common sense says it's not. So can't we check a box and move on and not waste a lot of money on this portion? I mean, I know you have to scientifically prove it, but I think the gentleman's point is accurate. The correlation is minimal at best. And I don't even think there is, an R square of anything on this.
Yeah, Jim, and I think part of this process is we're supposed to define what is significant or undesirable. So it may be relatively easy to take a look at this and determine that there's nothing there that is causing it to have an undesirable impact.
And that's, I fully agree with you, Richard. And that's what I'm trying to say. I guess I'm just saying it a little less eloquently. You know, let's do your initial things. If we don't have anything, parts of other places you've got portion, decimal points of feet or feet more than several feet. When you're up and down and you're net zero, you could hypothesize, well, the more you pump, the more it rises. So I just would hate to see us go down a road too far when we really don't need to, and check the box insignificant or not harmful or whatever the proper terminology was.
But to Richard's point, we can define a threshold of statistical significance, I believe, right?
Okay.
Is that correct?
It can also, at least for land subsidence, it doesn't necessarily have to be a quantitative statistical threshold. It could be more qualitative in terms of what constitutes significant and unreasonable. But and I do make a recommendation in the next slide based on this data. I did just want to point out that you are correct. During certain periods, especially you'll see in late 2015 here, you get an increase in groundwater level, and we don't see any correlation with vertical displacement. And also the same occurs in 2017. So the system could be much more complex. We've got an interlayered system, potentially different pressure or pore pressures in each one of those systems, and we're getting kind of an average of what those pressures are with the groundwater level that is likely screened across multiple aquifers. So you wouldn't necessarily expect, always a direct correlation. And really, when it comes to subsidence, something that's really important is kind of like the time-weighted average. So if your groundwater levels are low and your corresponding pore pressures are low for a long time, you're typically going to see the result of being compaction and subsidence. But when you have a hydrograph that from year to year is fluctuating back and forth, you're not going to necessarily always see a trend. You kind of have to look at the average pore pressure over this entire period to figure out what is really going on with subsidence. And one reason we did, present land subsidence as one of the first sustainability indicators is that it doesn't really appear that in the Ojai Basin that there's significant and unreasonable land subsidence occurring. The degree of land subsidence in the basin is minimal, has not substantially interfered with surface land uses in the past, and is not anticipated to substantially interfere with surface land uses in the foreseeable future, including within the GSP's planning and implementation horizon, so long as groundwater levels remain above historical lows. Therefore, DUDEC is recommending to the board and staff that the GSP not propose minimum thresholds or measurable objectives specific to the land subsidence sustainability indicator. If during the GSP implementation timeline, it becomes evident that minimum thresholds and measurable objectives for lowering of groundwater levels and groundwater and storage yet to be developed are not being met, the degree to which land subsidence may become an undesirable result will be reevaluated. DUDEC also recommends continued monitoring of subsidence and uplift annually using publicly available INSAR data. No additional land subsidence monitoring is recommended at this time. Any questions with that?
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's real well summarized by Mr. Finch, and it's something that the box is checked. Move on and continue to pay attention, but let's not spend a whole lot of time and effort and money doing too much about it right now.
Agreed.
And I'd like to make one comment. Trey, Bob Daddy here. There's no visible movement. We're not getting people with homes shifting. We're not getting sinking. We're not getting cracked. I'm an insurance agent also. We're not getting foundation issues. As you drive around the valley, we're not getting dips and fractures and slides on the roads. We're not seeing joint expansions and other things that are surface that are very easily identified. I'm all over this valley probably every 3 weeks, probably just drive the entire thing where I have to go. And so I would think that, if we start to see some movement, we're going to see it in the roads. It's not just going to be at the wellhead, and it's just not going to be in the orchards. We're going to see it on the roads and the hard surfaces first. That's where we should be able to feel it, and that's where it'll have the biggest impact. And I'm certainly unaware of any of that today. So.
Thank you. And if you have any comments on the text or how we want to address what constitutes significant unreasonable in the basin for land subsidence, we're happy to incorporate that into the GSP when it gets to that point. But one reason we did, present this first is that, at this time, we don't think it warrants any additional investigation.
Anyone have any questions? Is there anyone in the public that has any questions? Okay, I suspect this was the easy one. So.
No, seawater intrusion was the easy one.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't have to deal with that one.
Yeah.
That's good.
So we've got 2 out of the way now.
All right. All right, is there anything else on this?
That's it on our end.
All right, thanks, Trey. Thank you
sir.
for staff.
I'm sorry, Trey, we're kind of a prickly group, but
Okay, back to the agenda here. All right, if there's no other comments on item 8B, we'll move on to item 8C, and that's WCB grant project. Jordan, are you gonna?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Chair Hayes. Trey, can you stop sharing your screen and maybe the representative from Santa Barbara can have the floor?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right.
There we go. It's hiding on me.
Appreciate it. All right, now.
You got it?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Appreciate it. All right, let's share this. We'll come right back to where we left off in that PowerPoint presentation, which is the Wildlife Conservation Board. Just to update everyone, this is a grant for which the OBGMA applied, along with several other entities in Ventura County, to really find some pots of money and do some projects and planning to help understand and really enhance and identify the potential enhancement of Ventura River stream flow, namely for our purposes, San Antonio Creek. So the project that the OBGMA is involved with is a southern portion of basin depth discrete monitoring well. And we've kind of gone over it a couple times on where it's going to be and why it's going to be there. But really what I want to get into is that it's funded by the Wildlife Conservation Board grant. There's really no significant matching or financial contribution by the OBGMA. And in fact, much of the funding has been able to cover some of our expenses in our normal operations. Some of the monitoring that we're doing as far as increase in frequency and the stream flow and logging, things of that nature, we're able to sweep into the pocket of the Wildlife Conservation Board grant. Right now, we're undergoing quite a bit of permitting. The city of Ojai getting an encroachment permit, a permanent one. Of course, a well permit, OBGMA well permit. I think we'll be able to get that, and Ventura County well permit is ministerial once we have the other two. So where is this thing going? We've gone back and forth over where it should go. There's our network of loggers. Historically, there's the basin outflow point. And we're going for a spot that's right in the middle of town, south of 150, not too far from the OBGMA offices. We're actually looking at putting this in Fulton Street, not too far away from Hanson's yard. It'll be on a public right of way, sort of right in the parkway between the gutter and the sidewalk. We're going to go on the actually west side of Fulton Street here. Why is this important? This is a place where we know the perched aquifer to be present. We have good data north and south, and want to kind of make sure that we're getting all the data points for all the aquifers in this area in a discrete way. In addition to that depth discrete monitoring well, we've got the Hanson Yard well there, for which we have a good amount of data, e-logs and geologic logs and water levels now. But we also have this man site that's just north of the Ojai Valley Trail or the Vital Path and east of Fulton Street. And from there, we've got quite a bit of each of those pink dots on this map represent a monitoring well. And all of those encountered the perched aquifer and groundwater within it at around 10 to 12 feet below ground surface. You can see in the boring log here, it's a silt right over a clay stratum, at least as they show. And they went down actually to a little gravel that was right below it, but that's just a 25-foot deep monitoring well. The Hanson well, it goes down 400 feet, and we've got an e-log from that, and you can see the stratigraphy of the basin really throughout the perch system, and then 4 or 5 aquifers below that we'll be able to capture in a depth discrete monitoring well, and deeper as well. So where will this go? It's going to go right in that parkway, as I mentioned. This is simple location, so you can see where Fulton Street and the Ojai Valley Trail or the Bridle Path are. It'll probably be a little bit further south than this, so that we avoid the structures to the north, and then also displace a couple of the homeless encampments that are in that area. What is it going to do for us? It'll let us know what's going on specifically in both the perch system and the production aquifer, so that when precipitation flows, that which saturates the perch system on its way to San Antonio Creek, we can identify its quality and its quantity, and really help to reify the hypothesis and support it with respect to the importance of the perching layer and projects that will, as Mr. Wyrick mentioned earlier, hardscape changes, in-city infiltration galleries, rainwater harvesting, rain gardens, bioswales, things of that nature that can help retain some of that rainwater on and within the city, that then flattens the hydrograph and demonstrates that flow to San Antonio Creek, which is really opposite of subsidence or seawater intrusion, really the harder part of the GSP. And that's probably where the bulk of the effort and comments will come from in the ensuing months. So with respect to our schedule here for the depth discrete monitoring well, the city permitting, we're looking at being on the February 23rd agenda. Alma Quezada, who's actually also a geologist, and I've worked with her when she was at Zone and Crestview and a few other agencies over the years, is new to the planning department at the city and is shepherding this one through. So it's nice to have that level of collaboration. We'd like to put the OBGMA permit together for the February meeting, and then the county permit in March 2021, which puts us drilling this well in April of this year. And ideally, we're doing that by then so that we're able to catch the peak 2021 water year. Ideally, it hasn't happened yet. All day to point that it hasn't happened yet. And when it does, hopefully this well's in the ground to be able to pull it together. We've got a location, we've got the permitting. By going with the city-owned parkway, it's a permanent encroachment rather than a permanent easement that the OBGMA would need if we were to partner with a private landowner in the area. And by doing it in the city, it's always going to be open. That permanent encroachment permit will allow us to access that as need be. What we're deliberating on now is exactly the drilling methods that we'll use. We're looking at sonic drilling as a potential ideal. Sonic drilling uses a very high frequency vibratory sonic, ultrasonic bit. It turns and creates a core in the subsurface that we can use to then put in the amount of detail that we need within the casing. Sonic drilling has a small footprint, low profile, can get a continuous core. The cuttings are dry and transportable, so they're easily used as fill somewhere else or taken by whomever needs them. We don't expect contamination here at all. Casing that stabilizes the borehole, so it allows for that piezometer installation. And the crews that work on these tend to be really clean operations. They tend to be used to working in tight, small areas and a small profile. The limitations of sonic is that there's nobody really in town that does this. They're going to come from as far away as Upland or Cucamonga or some other places in Los Angeles County where they have their operations and yards. One of the other limitations is that we won't have an E-log before the final design, but with a continuous core, we should be able to design this and construct it accordingly. This is what those sonic rigs look like. This is drilling a well and monitoring well in Santa Paula. It's relatively small. You can see all the cuttings coming out in bags from the time that the bores are drilled. And then by the time that is complete, that's basically what we'll be looking at, that square box with a circular vault, traffic rated, although it's going to be in the parkway, so it probably won't get too much traffic, hopefully, over it. And you can see in this case, there's a couple of nested wells, but room for plenty more in that 12-inch diameter vault. On a mud rotary method, which is more typical of folks like what Hansen would do there on their yard right across the street. That's a major benefit of going with a mud rotary method. It's proximity to driller's yard. We get the E-log prior to the final well design. It does allow for a bit more aggressive development, but that just means more water coming out of these wells. It's more normal for water wells as opposed to monitoring wells. limitations on this are with fluid disposal, getting rid of all the drilling mud and cuttings that are mixed with mud disposal. And it's of course a high profile. You can see how much larger it is in this picture. You may have seen this. You may have seen this rig drilling Ventura River well number 6. That it was just off Highway 150. It was about a couple years ago now. The limitations on this, of course, we have to get rid of the fluids. That high profile is big, large profile and large footprint. There's also mud invasion issues, so it's easier to let mud seep into the zones that we'd be monitoring, which takes some time to develop. And I think with the depth discrete monitoring well at the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds, which was drilled via this method, that was one of the drawbacks. It took quite a bit of development to get that drilling mud out of there. All right, so that's it for the update on that. We'll look forward to giving more next month, and any questions, happy to answer them now.
Jordan, just go ahead. I'll wait for everybody else, but I got a couple of comments from Peter Candy. Peter called earlier today, couldn't be at the meeting. He would like to have a brief review of the encroachment permit, if that's possible. So if you could email him something. Also, he was clear that OBGMA, no matter where this well goes, we're going to be responsible for it. And so it means, you know, if it's going to be in a public right of way, we're going to need to make sure we don't have any collapses or areas that could be detrimental to auto traffic or pedestrian traffic. So it is something we'll just have to monitor and maintain over time. And Jordan, you're going to be there quite a bit. Anyway.
I'll fill Peter in on those details.
Yeah. So that's all he had to say.
Correct. Yeah. Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I can tell you that it's been circulated among staff and council, and it's only been positive response so far on the city's side.
Good. We appreciate that.
All right, we'll move on to the item number D, is a request for proposal for the audit for 2018, 2019. John?
Yeah, I don't want to make this a big deal. Our last audits that were completed were for the fiscal year 2017 and 16 and 17. We need to get caught up. We need to do 18 and 19. There are not a lot of companies that are willing to do this. So I'm not sure how much of an RFP it's going to be. A request for proposal. It may be more just trying to identify who's willing to do it. And we do have proposals from the past. So I just wanted to get an authorization to move forward. This doesn't mean authorizing it to move forward. We'll come back once we get a reasonable proposal. We'll come back to the board and request that you approve moving forward.
Any questions or comments? You have a motion? No. Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Finch, I'd so move.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a second. You call the roll, Roberta.
Are you muted? Well,
could we do it ourselves verbally?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. Director Weirwick?
Yes.
Director Thiel?
Yes.
Bilkey, excuse me, I'm sorry. Director Daddy?
Yes.
And Director Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Finch.
Oh, and Director Finch, I forgot you were here.
Yep.
He made the motion.
Yes, he did.
Okay, the next item is review of customer overpayment.
Yeah, I just put this on here. It's really not an action item, but we did get a request. I included the email in your package. It's for over $5,000 overpayment. Apparently the customer didn't calculate it properly. Before I authorize moving forward, sending a check to somebody for that amount, I want to verify the meter, its multipliers. I want to look at the calculations. If they made an error in calculation on the initial payment, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the calculations on the request for payment. So we'll go through it, and I hope to have this back to you next month for authorization. I don't know what the final outcome will be, but worst case, I guess it'll be 5,000, and best case, something less. But I just want to make you aware of it.
All right, any questions? All right, next item is the information items. Everyone has to get their Form 700s in, and any changes in office filed with Berta or online, whichever. I think you can do it online.
Generally, I know they've been filed in the offices of OBGMA. I don't think there's a requirement to have them filed with the county. So I'm not sure. You might be able to, you can probably find the form online and fill it out, but you probably need to print it or email it to Roberta so she'll have a copy to keep on file.
Okay. All right. Any other business?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
have one question, and I hate to bring this up. On page 9, under expenses, in the middle of the expense column, it says workman's compensation insurance. I don't see anything there.
Okay.
Do we actually have workman's compensation for our employee?
Yes, we're required to pay that.
Well, I know, yeah, I know we're
I know we have
required.
to pay it.
I just didn't see where it had been paid. And 38 years in insurance is you don't pay, you don't have. It just, I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but that happens from time to time.
Yeah, bear with me just a second. I had it
Oh,
open.
I don't need an answer right
closed
now.
it.
It was just brought to the attention. Maybe it just didn't get put in. I'm reasonably sure we have it. I just like to check.
Okay, I'll verify that. And if it needs corrected, we'll correct it. Since the board approved those, I'll assume that they'll approve subject to any corrections that we need to make.
All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully you all get wet today.
Get out and get wet. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen very often anymore.
Yes,
Jim,
Be good to have you.
Adjourned at 4:21. Pardon me?
when did you come online, Jim? You still there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. It was about, well, I'm not actually sure. About 45 minutes ago.
Okay, that's close enough. I just want to have something for the record.
Miss your handsome face there, Jim.
Yeah, no.